Okay, welcome to the Adventure Within channel. My name is Andrew Fritz. I'm a clairvoyant, healer, and meditation teacher. And I thought it'd be fun to talk about our multidimensional universe, covering the 12 major dimensions plus source. Now, I'm not saying that there's only 12 dimensions. I'm saying that there's potentially 12 major dimensions, and that I tend to find that within major dimensions are subdimensions. So there can be many, many dimensions. And this is just from my perspective, my point of view, based off of my own inner experiences and what I've seen clairvoyantly and through astral travel. You know, if you've experienced things differently or seen things differently, that's totally fine. Now, to kind of paint a picture, and don't really get attached to this picture, it just might be helpful as I kind of go through covering some of the highlights within each dimension, starting with the first. But if you could imagine an onion, right? So an onion has layers. And, you know, if the outer layer, we could say that would be the first dimension or the physical dimension. And that when you go out of body, you're going inwards. And the core, the center of the onion, we could say that would be source. So as you travel through the dimensions, further and further inwards and upwards in vibration, you're making your journey to source. Okay. So again, first dimension is just the physical dimension, physicality, where you operate your physical body. There's not really much to say or talk about this. We kind of know this. But going inwards, I'm just going to say it's the second dimension. And it's very similar to the physical, not exact. But the second dimension is primarily where you would use your etheric body. So it's a slightly lighter version of your physical body. And, you know, and it's the second dimension is not limited to only the etheric body. I've noticed that the astral body can kind of come into this dimension a little bit as well, but it's primarily for the etheric body. So people that have had the type of near-death experiences where they're kind of, say, you know, they might be flatlining in the operating room and they find themselves floating out of their physical body, like at the ceiling and looking down, and they can see a doctor or nurses or assistants and people working on their physical body. That's probably happening in this particular dimension where they're kind of noticing it from. And I'm not saying that all near-death experiences, they're all just only in the second dimension. It might start there and then they might have other experiences elsewhere. Okay, so then the third dimension. The one highlight that I can point out in the third dimension is there's this outdoor fountain, and surrounding the outdoor fountain are these stone slabs that are thin and they're vertical. And I tend to find that you know, people might come here to meditate in their astral body, and sometimes specifically focusing on their willpower energy. Something I just discovered recently, because I'm always learning and growing. I love learning and growing and change. And off to the side, what I just kind of discovered is this, if you ever seen like above ground burial vaults, it looks like that. And within it is this, this big book. And I'm not saying these are the only things or topics within this book, but three of them that I noticed off the bat was about waking up in dreams, so lucid dreaming, information about that, information about out-of-body experiences, and then information about willpower mastery. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm definitely going to go back and revisit that. Going to the fourth dimension. This is an interesting dimension because it starts to, there's definitely a shift, and there seems to be this quality or energy of magical realism where there's this blending of, you know, magic and things that are seemingly normal to you. From like physical waking reality. So there's this kind of merging or blending happening here. So you might see normal things here, but you also might start to see different types of beings, like magical beings here. I'm not saying that magical beings are limited to the fourth dimension, but this is where you might notice them for sure. I tend to find that this dimension, things seem a little more colorful or vibrant. Another thing that I can point out in the fourth dimension is these large healing crystals, emerald green healing crystals that if you kind of quote unquote stand near, you'll definitely start receiving a healing. You'll just start naturally purging out. I tend to find, and you know, for myself and watching other people, really low dense heavy energies. So that can be kind of intense for it to purge out, but obviously healing and rewarding. So that's the fourth dimension. We'll go a little more inwards to the fifth dimension. I tend to find that the fifth dimension is kind of void-like, not like scary or bad or anything like that. It just seems kind of dark, and it seems to be focused around sound. And what I tend to find or see here or notice is if you can imagine lightning bolts that shoot off in all sorts of different directions, and they're different colors as well. And you can really tune into hearing this energy of these different lightning bolts that are, different colored lightning bolts. I tend to find that the lightning bolts are just pure raw energy that you can kind of tune into or hear, but it will almost illuminate the kind of the darkness. And then that kind of like, once that lightning bolt fades and it kind of goes more to like a darkness. And I also noticed it seems like a highway almost, but there's not actually a highway, where just beings are just zipping by. And it's not limited to one specific type of being, but they almost look like balls of light with like a little like tail, and because they're just zipping by so quickly. I've seen, this is where I start to see like non-locals or like ET type beings start to communicate and interact here at this level. So fifth dimension, going into the sixth dimension seems a little more visual focus. Like the fifth dimension seems kind of dark and void-like, if you will, but not bad or wrong or negative or scary. I tend to find at the sixth dimension level, you're basically just pure light and awareness in this dark void, if you will. And out in front of you, so to speak, you might see colors swirling, you might see symbols, you might see basically images. If you've ever experienced like hypnagogic or hypnopompic imagery, kind of when you're just waking up or just falling asleep, when you start to notice these images playing out, like little dream scenes that are random and constantly changing, you start to know, you have the potential to notice that, and you're just kind of witnessing this. And then sometimes instead of witnessing it, these images might get closer, it's seemingly closer and like bigger, and start to kind of almost curve and wrap around the light and awareness that you are. And then it's almost like you get sucked into this dream world, if you will, this we'll call it a dream world, this image. And it's like you're a little dream character within that dream world. Yet behind this big image or dream world, with you as a dream character within that dream world, behind all that is still you, the light and awareness that you truly are, just simply being and observing this. So I find that interesting, but that's the main highlight I noticed in the sixth dimension. Okay, so that's dimensions 1 through 6. I tend to find where I get most excited is the seventh dimension going all the way inwards. I taught a training called the Inner Dimensions. We cover all the dimensions, but the main focus is like the seventh going all the way to source. So the seventh dimension, there's numerous kind of big highlights here. One would be a healing river. And I'm not saying that this is the only dimension you're going to find a healing river. This is just one where I find it in the seventh dimension. And when you get into this healing river, obviously it's a healing, hence the name of it, but it's an experience of flow and non-resistance, and it helps clear points of resistance out of you. It's like an energy healing, basically. And it's, the comparison I would use in your physical waking reality would be like receiving a massage. So a masseuse is working out like a knot in the body, just a lot of tension, stress there. It's similar to that, but you get in the healing river, and it's like you're just clearing points of resistance and experiencing this non-resistance, this total flow. So there's that. There's also your personal Akashic records, where it has really nothing to do with anybody else, just kind of your information as a being. So there's that. And then there's also the universal Akashic records. So this is where people might disagree with me, and that's totally fine. But I tend to find that there's a personal and universal Akashic records. In one subdimension of the seventh dimension, there might be your personal Akashic records, and then on a higher inner subdimension of the seventh dimension would be like the universal Akashic records. And so different subdimension, but in the same major dimension, 7th dimension. And so the Universal Akashic Records, it's like kind of like a big public library. You'll see different beings there. A lot of information. So your information is going to be there, and everyone else's information is going to be there. And what I noticed, the cool thing on the top of it is like the rooftop, so to speak. These like almost looking like gargoyle type beings. Doesn't seem like there's one. Seems like there's a whole grouping of them, and not scary, not like freak out, but it's just protective beings kind of hanging out on top of this structure, this Universal Akashic Records. So you have that. The other thing I noticed in this dimension is I just refer to it as, because I never was taught this, it's just something that I encountered. I just call it the spiritual campus. I tend to find this kind of it almost seems like the Great Wall of China, or at least a part of it. And then kind of right next to it is this building, and it's not really big, but I call it the spiritual campus because there always seems to be someone teaching, and there's always seems to be a group of students listening and learning and watching. And some of the topics, and it's not a giant space, but some of the things that I've noticed that have been taught there would be like astral body healings, topics like mediumship or claircognizance or clear knowing. Not limited to those, but those are just a few examples I can provide. The interesting thing on the top of this spiritual campus structure is this almost seems like a launch pad that can help launch you into the next dimension, which would be the 8th dimension. I tend to find this to be a dimension where when you reach this level, basically you're stepping out of the field of play. You're stepping out of this incarnation, this lifetime. So this is kind of like the realm of the higher self, where you get to explore your wisdom. You get to take a look at past lives. It's kind of eerie, but it's also like really cool to kind of get to that space, to really step out. So that's the 8th dimension. And I could go much more in depth with each dimension. This is really, again, just a brief overview. So this is kind of what I refer to as like kind of entering the beyond. And then beyond, say, the 8th dimension would be the 9th dimension. This is a space, it's not limited to this, but you might find yourself reviewing your soul journey. So not necessarily like a life review that you hear about in your death experiences. It's not necessarily you reviewing just this incarnation. It would be that you'd be reviewing your entire, or parts, or possibly the entirety of your soul journey, which could be a lot. So you might do that in this dimension, and I've seen it also done in other dimensions, but that tends to happen here. Another thing I notice, it's something I call just the Sea of the Souls. I tend to notice a lot of beings here in this dimension, and I notice a lot of them tend to be waiting to incarnate. And also, I tend to find in the 8th dimension, that's a space where you could potentially set up new lifetimes. And when you are looking to set up a new lifetime, where you don't have a physical body and you're trying to set up a lifetime and choose your parents and all that, you can kind of see how, if I choose, this mother and this, because I choose that mother, it might be this father and this part of the world I'll be born into and these circumstances, how things could potentially play out. And you might notice that, certain things might happen and there might be areas of that life where things get hard or difficult, and you might need certain assistance or information that could be helpful for you to navigate those hard times. And so you might step up to this 9th dimension, and this is where I find sometimes people recruit certain beings that are waiting to incarnate as spirit guides. So while they're waiting to incarnate, they might be freed up to, I can, for this amount of time, I can be your spirit guide and help you out in these particular certain segments of your life or the entire life if it works out, and so on. So you kind of create an agreement there. So I've seen that. Okay, so 10th dimension. The main highlight I noticed here is a small wise council. I tend to find them on these like big pillars, kind of in a semicircle. And I tend to find that this particular council oversees dimensions the 7th dimension all the way down to the 1st. In addition to this kind of small wise council, I do notice that there's this like a lavender field. It's just very peaceful. to me, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be too much to it that it's just like, wow, it's just incredibly peaceful to observe it or see it or be there. Also notice a beach, and the water, there's just this energy of clarity, and like when you kind of submerge yourself in the water, there's this experiencing this like great sense of clarity. Just kind of, you start to have this absence of any kind of obscurity or cloudiness. So that's what I noticed there. Going inwards to the 11th dimension, this one's pretty cool because there's all these, I find these advanced learning studios, these small little buildings. It's like, almost seems like it's like a little village. And there's all these different small buildings where teachers, when I tend to kind of go in and look at these, I just see all the beings as balls of light. Like the teacher's a ball of light, the students, there doesn't seem to be a lot of students in these particular buildings, but each building I tend to find is dedicated to like a certain topic. So different topics that may be covered in this, like this village, so to speak, would be like astral travel or manifestation or telekinesis and things like that, just advanced psychic abilities and topics. Also in the 11th dimension, I noticed that there's this building that has a big fountain within it. But the main thing I find interesting about this building or structure in the 11th dimension is this, it seems like a boardroom. Just a big room where there's this long table. For me, I've seen it with other people, but this is where I tend to meet up with my personal spiritual counsel, where they might guide me on just kind of fulfilling purpose. So others might experience something similar, but they also might meet somewhere else with their personal spiritual counsel. So that's the 11th dimension. Going inwards to the 12th dimension, I noticed that there's this fence, and behind this fence line, it's just, I'd call it the light of God, or I refer to it as almost the glow of God. It's this kind of yellowy golden light. And then off to the side, I noticed this big stadium, like an outdoor NFL type stadium. And in the seating area, I noticed people, some of the souls that are in those seating areas would be like people that have graduated this system, Earth system. You might find ascended masters here. Also notice a small kind of council here as well. And this council might kind of oversee the entire, all dimensions, all 1 through 12, but also, definitely will graduate beings, people, souls that are like ready to graduate, might receive some sort of review. So just like in the 9th dimension where you can review your entire soul journey, it has the potential of also occurring in this 12th dimension, this particular stadium. So beings will kind of get graduated, so to speak, here. And I also noticed this council that's also in the stadium might witness beings that perhaps are just unconscious oneness, kind of source, that might depart from source as an individual soul, so to speak, that's just starting their spiritual journey well before any type of incarnation. And so it's kind of on both ends, right? So it's this observing of beings just beginning their spiritual journey, but also on the other side of the spectrum where it's beings that are like, okay, I'm done, I'm graduating, that's it. So that's just a little bit about the the stadium. When you step beyond the stadium and this kind of glow of God in the 12th dimension, we start to get to the space immediately surrounding source. And then this is just from my personal experience as a clairvoyant, some astral travel. If people experience things differently or see it differently, that's totally okay. So what I notice is that there is essentially one long hallway. And in the center, it almost kind of like a lowercase t. Like if there's just a floating lowercase t in the sky, that long hallway, there's that. And I noticed that on one end of this long hallway will kind of lead right to that stadium in the 12th dimension. And on the other end of that hallway will lead them to kind of by a gate outside that fence where they can see the glow of God. Now, when we get to the actual T part, the shorter horizontal hallway, right at the center, kind of in the middle of everything, that's where I tend to find source. I tend to just see it as this this golden flame, this energy of just divine grace. Now, when that T, it almost seems like a hallway as well, where I notice that if I travel down one side, it will take me, it just seems like I'm going outside into the sky. It just seems like the day sky with blue and, you know, some clouds, and it's just like angels. That's what I noticed with that. If you go back in and go down the other side of that T hallway, there's this big door, and it just leads to just kind of like this void. I just call it the Great Void, where maybe souls that are further along their journey or have already graduated, this is a unique space, so to speak, where one might meditate in this kind of, I just call it the Great Void. But at the center of this whole T structure, this space immediately around source, I tend to find it's just this, again, this kind of golden flame, this everlasting golden flame of divine grace. And that's, again, just a brief overview of the 12 major dimensions from my perspective and source. Yes, if you have any questions or you have your own experiences as a clairvoyant or through astral travel and want to share them, feel free to leave a comment below. You know, if you're really interested in this stuff, maybe I can do more in-depth going into, you know, make a video just about one particular dimension and kind of go through it that way if that's interesting to you. But yeah, hope that was interesting, and see you in the next video.